When Xenoblade 3 first dropped last year, it was pretty universally loved by everyone who played it. It got great reviews across the board, being praised for the super customizable combat system, the lovable characters, and the deep philosophical storytelling. Although a fantastic piece of work and my personal favorite game in the series, there were two aspects of the game that fans generally agreed weren't that great. The first being that the game had somewhat bland antagonists with the consoles, which I definitely agree with, and the other being that the world wasn't that interesting, that it felt fairly empty while exploring it. During my first playthrough, I didn't really understand this complaint at the beginning, but after exploring much more of 3's world, I can definitely see where that consensus came from. The world isn't bad by any means, it actually has some of the most gorgeous areas in the series, especially when looking at somewhere like Arithia Sea. Despite this, however, I think it is safe to say Xenoblade 3's world, compared to the others in this series, lacks a certain something that makes it feel meaningful to explore. Giving the player a reason to search around these super cool areas is extremely important, and while the base game of Xenoblade 3 may have missed in this regard, the DLC story Future Redeemed fixes this in an extremely simple way. Although I'm sure everyone is still trying to figure out the insane ending of the story, today I want to talk about the gameplay of Future Redeemed, and how one simple system made the game's world genuinely fun and even addictive to explore. I am of course talking about the Affinity Goals system. But before I get into that, I want to mention what made the map design of base game 3 feel kind of empty and lackluster, as I feel it's important to understand. For this part, I want to point out that I'm not talking about the physical layout of the map. While having really complex and scenic level design is extremely important for an open world, I don't think that's the root of the problem here. Like I said earlier, I think Xenoblade 3 has some of the coolest areas in the series, and yet it still feels like it's missing something. Instead, I want to emphasize how the game fills these areas with things to do, and why it doesn't always feel worth exploring. Besides the Xenoblade basics, like enemies and new locations every now and again, really the only thing to see in Ionios are ether channels, containers, and collectibles scattered on the ground. Ether channels help you with various things like building gems, but there are so many along the beaten path that you'll rarely need to go out of your way to find some. Containers give you lots of different things, like money, gemstones, and the Nopon coins. Although money doesn't have a lot of uses, and when half the accessories are things like this, containers feel pretty underwhelming and repetitive after a while. With no unique rewards coming out of the containers, what's the point of trying to find them? Nopon coins are definitely the most useful item here, but you're not guaranteed to get them, so it doesn't really help the case. Xenoblade 2 had a similar system, but what came out of the containers were core crystals, aux cores, and weapon chips, all things that directly contribute to making the player stronger. Most of the time, there's no good reason to go looking for regular containers in Xenoblade 3. And don't even get me started on the collectibles, man. Seriously, did anyone use the collectopedia cards after that first tutorial? Why would you make it like this? Why? Xenoblade 1 and X had the collectopedia system down perfectly. Filling out a record of all the items in a given area is really satisfying. It's enough to get the player to walk around a bit more in search of new items. There isn't much incentive to look for these things in 3, as it doesn't really contribute anything of value to the player, which is a big reason for the emptiness. Now, really quick, I want to mention the colonies and the hero quests you find during your adventures, as somehow I've neglected to talk about them until now. These are hands down the best part of the open world, and I actually have no complaints about them. However, I don't think it's enough to change the fact that the rest of the world is sort of lacking something. I just didn't want anyone to think I forgot about the hero quests or anything. They are amazing, and I hope something similar to them returns in future entries. Okay, I promise this video isn't supposed to be all complaining. I'm not just dunking on 3's world for fun. The main point I'm trying to convey is that by giving the player a meaningful reason to explore each area, the world begins to feel so much more alive and fun. This is something that Future Redeemed and the Affinity Goal system does perfectly. Affinity Goals basically combine the collectopedia from Xenoblade 1 and X with everything in the open world. Not only does the game track what items you pick up on the ground, now it also logs what enemies you've killed, how many locations you've found, which people you've talked to, and even the number of ether channels and containers you've used. Once you complete an Affinity Goal task, you're rewarded with AP, which is used to get your characters new arts and skills, as well as improve their stats. Now there is a direct link between you exploring the world and your characters becoming stronger. Because of this, there is always a reason to explore and record your adventures into the Affinity Goal system. Even if you don't need any ether or you don't need anything from a container, you might as well look around and grab some, as it will be added to your log. On top of this, the rewards for opening containers and chests are much more impactful on your character's progression. They contain items that let you unlock equipment options that you didn't previously have access to, which can pretty drastically change their gameplay and overall performance in battle. Instead of every treasure chest feeling the exact same and giving you slightly better equipment than the one you already have, they all have something pretty different and meaningful to the player's progression. I particularly noticed this with the enemies. In other games, if I needed experience points, it didn't really matter which enemy I was fighting, and if I already had experience, I would walk past all the enemies without even thinking about them. Now, however, I'm consciously looking out for new types of monsters on my journey so that I can fill out my enemypedia and get those rewards. Even with rewards aside, the Affinity Goal system still provides a satisfying log of all the things you've done during your adventure. There are many studies showing that making a list of things to do can increase productivity when trying to get things done, as once it's checked off, it provides evidence that you accomplished something, which is, of course, a good feeling. The Affinity Goal system is essentially just that, a list of all the things you have already accomplished and all the things you have yet to accomplish. It's amazing how just having a record of tasks to check off can be such a motivator for exploring the world. And once you get going with these tasks, it can be pretty hard to stop. It is such a simple and smart way to get the player to notice all the aspects of an environment, and with a world as gorgeous and well thought out as Xenoblade, it deserves that kind of attention. It's an amazing mechanic. So much so that it makes me wish they could somehow go back and add this to the base game. Just by adding a tally of everything you've done, it would instantly give all the things in the world a better purpose. It would make exploring an already beautiful Ionios much more meaningful, something I hope every Xeno game in the future strives to do. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me on the points I made here, or if there's anything that I missed that I should have talked about. I love hearing other people's opinions on these kinds of topics. Speaking of which, I wanted to give a huge thank you to everyone for the support on the channel recently. Anyone who's liked or commented or even just watched the video, I really appreciate it. As I'm recording this, we're just over 300 subscribers, which is insane to me. I made this channel just because I really like Xenoblade and I kind of just wanted to rant about it. So I'm really glad some people are willing to listen to my talks. It means a lot to me. So thank you so much. I still have a lot of ideas for videos and things I want to talk about, so stay tuned if you're interested. And last thing, a while ago I made a video talking about the level design of all the Xenoblade games, so check that out if you'd like. Okay, I think I'm done talking. Thank you again so much, and I'll see you guys soon.